Hi sup chicks and sup blokes. Today we are going to road test the GoPro Handle Bar mount for stand-up paddleboarding. We've made a video previously about the top 5 reasons you need to get a handlebar mount for stand-up paddleboarding, and you can find that video here. However, today what we're going to do is go through the pros and cons of this kind of mount for filming paddleboarding with your GoPro. The main thing that we found with videoing stand-up paddleboarding is that you want to have some amount of flexibility, versatility in the shots that you get, and the handlebar mount gives you exactly this. You essentially can point and shoot it anywhere. So this probably sounds quite obvious, but when you're comparing it to something like a board nose mount, that can make getting images quite tricky because you essentially need to maneuver your whole board to point it in the right direction. So you're not able to capture those spontaneous shots such as a bird flying past or maybe someone falling off their paddleboard. Another thing that we really like about using the handlebar mount is that it keeps your camera nice and secure. So you're a lot less likely to lose it into the water. Having said that though, we have found it quite difficult to mount the floaty on the camera while we're using the handlebar mount. I feel that you don't necessarily need the floaty because you're going to have to lose your entire paddle to lose your camera as well. So a really cool thing about having your camera mounted onto your paddle like this is that you can also use it as a selfie stick. So if you're wanting to talk to the camera in a vlog, you can quite easily point and shoot like that, or if you're wanting simply to catch a still, then you can also quite easily line up what's in the background and get your shot that way. It makes it a lot easier to get underwater shots as well, because you can simply just turn your paddle upside down and pop the camera in under the water surface and get some really cool shots of either fish or plants, lily pads, those sorts of things. We've got some really cool shots in the canals around Glasgow by doing that. Also out in the Western Isles where the water's so clear, it's really cool to just take some underwater shots that way as well. Another pro to using the handlebar mount is that it's essentially a hands-free way of filming, and I say this because if you have the paddle in 2 hands, you don't have a third hand to hold the camera, so the camera's already there, so you don't need to try and maneuver and juggle between which hands are going to hold what while you're paddling at the same time. What we've also found is that trying to film while you're on the water can be quite tricky, so a good way of stabilising your camera is to actually brace the paddle against the board, and that gives you a little bit more of a stable image as well. Obviously you've got your image stabiliser in the camera, however that can only do so much. So a great thing about this mount is that it's also not that expensive. If you want more information about it, see the link in the description below. But now on to the cons. When you have your camera attached to your paddle like this, you'll see that the viewfinder is obscured by the paddle itself. Now, I don't see this as being a huge problem because the GoPro has a pretty wide angle. You don't zoom, so if you're pointing your camera in generally the right spot, then you're going to get the shot that you want. So with the camera mounted to your paddle like this, you actually get better footage if you're not in the act of paddling at the time. So what I mean by this is when you're actually physically paddling, obviously the camera moves as well. So the footage that you get isn't the best. Like, you can add it to your film just for a little bit of a different perspective, but we tend to find we don't use this footage very much because it's a little bit dizzying on the observer. Typically what we'll do is maybe get a bit of momentum up with a couple of paddles, we're still gliding along the water, and then stop paddling and film from there. Now this leads me on into the next point, is that having the camera mounted up this high on your paddle can give a bit of a distorted perspective, because obviously your paddle is typically quite a bit higher or taller than what you are. To fix this, you can move the camera down for your shot, or you can put your paddle into the water to bring the camera to eye level. This is problematic if you are trying to get that gliding shot we talked about before, because obviously it'll stop you or slow you down. So alternatively, what I find that I do the most is to separate the paddle out quite quickly and then get my shot and then pop it back in. Sup bloke's favourite way of filming with this is to invert the paddle. So you essentially filming like this. If you do that though, of course you're going to get water running down to your hands and the camera, which isn't a big deal because obviously it's all waterproof, but just another thing to think of. Some people may find it a little bit bulky to have this amount of kit attached to your paddle. I don't find it a problem at all. Perhaps if you're doing a long marathon type paddle where you're going for tens of kilometers, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, maybe you'll get a bit more paddle fatigue from that. With the paddling that we do, we're a bit more chill. We don't tend to find the extra weight is that big a deal. So with any of the mounts for your GoPro, there's going to be pros and cons. We have found that this mount is the one that seems to have the most pros and the least amount of cons, and therefore is the most flexible for our use. If you want to find out more about this mount, then check out the post in the description below. If you want to find out more on purchasing one of these handlebar mounts, have a look in the description and there's a link down there for you as well. The mount itself is this piece here, which wraps around either a handlebar if you're a cyclist or your paddle if you're a paddleboarder. And there's a piece on the front here that you can attach your camera to. This is actually quite versatile in that you can turn it around and do all sorts of different angles, and the more of these extra little pieces you add on, the more variability you can have with exactly how it sits onto your pole. We have adjusted it so that it's sitting out more to the side of the pole like this, but it does seem to be just a little bit easier to knock, which also brings me to another point too. So what happened when we were on Loch Ness, we had just gotten out from a paddle and I went to put my paddle down onto the pebbly beach there, and I just sort of let it drop for the last 20 centimeters or so, and of course the camera went from being this way up to suddenly being this way up, and I smashed the lens. Yeah, just beware that when you are moving your paddle around with your camera attached to it, that you don't obviously want to hit something and smash your lens. But yeah, it's quite easy to attach. All you need to do is unscrew this and open this up, clasp it around your paddle and screw it back in. Making sure, of course, that the actual camera is pointing away from where your fingers grip. Thanks for watching. If you want any more information on the handlebar mount for your GoPro so you can make some awesome stand-up paddleboarding videos or just take photos with your GoPro, then check the link in the description below and it will take you to our website where we've written a little bit more in depth about it. Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, please support us by liking, subscribing, clicking notification and sharing with your paddleboarding mates. While you're here, check out some of these other videos. See you next time.